Welcome to the Dodo Dads podcast, where we talk with real dads who are in the trenches, raising daughters and doing their best to get it right. Through honest conversations, shared experiences, and a little humor, this show is designed to encourage, equip, and inspire good fathers to become even better girl dads. I'm Craig Gerber, the founder of Dodo Dads, and the father of three now grown young women with families of their own. Today's guest is Ben Killoy. He is a Marine Corps veteran and father of four who is a passionate advocate for intentional parenting. Ben and his wife are raising two daughters and two sons. Throughout this conversation, he shares the lessons he has learned while navigating the joys and challenges of fatherhood. Ben explains why being a girl dad is like holding your daughter's heart in your hand. It is your job to protect it without crushing it. He also discusses why dads should stop trying to create perfect experiences and instead focus on being present. Sometimes the most meaningful father-daughter date is simply a trip to Subway or a one-on-one outing that shows your daughter that she really matters. Ben shares practical ways to build confidence and independence in daughters through small everyday experiences. From ordering their own food to managing cash and advocating for themselves, he explains how fathers can prepare daughters for adulthood one step at a time. We also talk about the importance of creating trust early in life, having conversations about faith, protecting daughters from unhealthy influences, and helping them to understand their value and worth in a culture that often sends the wrong messages. Finally, Ben offers powerful insights on patience, leadership, and why fathers should focus less on raising children and more on raising future adults. If you're looking for practical wisdom about building a stronger relationship with your daughter while preparing her for life, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. To tell us his story, please welcome Ben Killoy to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Ben. I really appreciate it. You are a dad of four, so you had a girl, boy, correct?
That is correct. That is the order of the birth certificate.
Wonderful. What was it like for you to find out that your first child would be a girl?
Overwhelming, humbling, but also exciting. Ultimately, I would say there's always a bias towards a dad wanting to have a son, but knowing that you get a daughter first and guys get to choose the sex, but we also don't really get to choose because it's more random. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's this humbling awakening that doesn't fully set in because you think you're going to be ready because you've never had kids. So you dive in, you go through the experience, the baby comes, it's an amazing experience, but really girl dad doesn't kick in until the hair needs to be done or the dresses start getting dressed up, or the girly energy comes at you with a fiery pistol almost that you have to figure out how to navigate without breaking. And I wasn't this wise when I first got started, but I now look back and think being a girl dad is like holding your daughter's heart in your hand, knowing that you can protect it, but you can't smash it because men can go off and go too far where we smash it. But at the same time, we need to be able to hold it in our hands, protect it, but make sure that we guide it at the same time.
That's a very good point. And you're right about being a girl dad and learning about hair braids and things like that. I don't recall doing much of that as a dad, which surprised me, to having three girls. They never came to me asking me to fix their hair. So kudos to you for having that kind of relationship that they trust you with their hair.
Yes.
Were you in the military when your oldest daughter was born?
No, I had transitioned out. So I left the Marine Corps in 2007 and she wasn't born until 2012.
Okay, super. What are some of the things that your daughters like to do with you?
I would say in the early days, it was something as simple as my oldest daughter would just like to go to Subway. So she's a Subway fan. And I learned a long time ago, don't stress about trying to plan the perfect day. Just ask them, hey, what do you want to do with that? They would say, just go to Subway. Perfect. I can do that. That's 50% cheaper than anything I had in my mind. And from their perspective, one, I trust them. And two, they like knowing that I trust them and that dad's going to listen. But then it also becomes more meaningful for them as well. So the oldest is Subway. The youngest is often going ice skating, just doing something one-on-one. It's more intentionality with her. But every daughter is a little bit different for what they need. And the ultimate thing that happens with daughters, and no matter how many kids you have, is this element that with each daughter and each kid, you learn from each one. And the hardest thing to reconcile, and probably even a little bit more having a girl as a first, is every day, I'm 42 now, and every day I've never parented a 14-year-old. And every day she's never been anything more than a 14-year-old. And so we are both at the edge of our experience. And we're both at the edge learning as we go, not knowing what's right or not knowing that's not what you do. Or just understanding where our limits are and giving ourselves enough grace, because there's multiple times where my oldest daughter will throw at me and be like, you never did that with me, or you did it this way, or you were always double downing on these punishments and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, now I know. And that's the part that you and I both play together, is we were both learning at the edge of our experience. And now I know different.
That's right.
Now with our fourth one, Evan, my approach is punishment free, which is an entire new approach that I just read about and learning to dial in on. And I'm like, this is going to be revolutionary, different and difficult, but revolutionary, which the other kids are going to probably accuse me of, man, you never were that like with me, or Evan's your favorite. No, I just have a lot of experience that Evan gets to be the accumulation of and applied to.
That's right. We don't get a lot of training before we become fathers. We can attend a parenting class, etc. But the favorite joke I've heard is a guy who had 6 theories about raising children and then had 6 kids and no theories at the end, because every child is different, like you said, and trying to navigate those differences and still maintain some sort of consistency between children, that is a very hard thing to do.
And I would say one of the harder parts from the first one, gets more every kid you have and the more things that happen, is as new dads, and even if they're, let's say, under 7, you really have no idea the stakes in play. You have no idea. You may think you have some idea, and whatever some idea is, it's probably a centimeter thick. Because on the context of all the things that are going to come after your kids, that you need to protect them against, that you need to guide them against, that you need to steward them through, there are so many things out there that we know nothing about. And most dads don't wake up till it's too late. There's, I would say, one type of dad that doesn't wake up until his daughter comes home pregnant and it's, oh, I should have been paying attention.
That's right.
Now, hopefully you don't get to that stage and you recognize that there's things that you have to do at 7 to make sure that doesn't happen. And if you're not realizing the stakes at 7, that you'll always be carrying a much heavier cross to carry the older they are, the later you wake up.
Parenting one child is relatively easy, especially if you have mom and dad both involved. Parenting 2 can be different, but it's still manageable because the kids can go one-on-one with mom or dad. And then you add that third one and the dynamic changes considerably. And you added 4. The best example I ever heard was some pastor talking about what it was like to have 4 kids. He said, imagine yourself drowning and someone hands you a baby. And that's got to be a whole new dynamic to contend with.
It is. And I think the benefit for us is our first 3 are older. So they're 14, 11, and 9 now. And then Evan is 2. So I have 3 older people that want to worship Evan and help him and play with him and entertain him and go on walks outside with him. So the amount of extra help that you get is a lot more than if they were separated by 2 years apart like they were. But even when we had 3, I often, my short anecdotal advice is 1 kid is hard. 1 to 2 is even harder because all the systems you create for 1 do not carry over for 2. So you have to rewrite the entire book. Going to the grocery store is different with 2. Going to Target is different with 2. Going on vacation, airplanes, everything is different. But going from 2 to 3, you've got 1 extra helper because the first one is probably 4 at a minimum. And then it just is easier because you're already created SOPs for 2 kids, and most SOPs will carry over for 3 fairly easily. But that 1 to 2 shift, but then when 4 comes around, you're almost, you've let go of the naiveness. You can control this situation, and that there's any normalcy that'll happen, and you just embrace the chaos. That's more about how, if the house is burning down with emotions, this is just what fatherhood looks like today. If the car is burning down with emotions, I just joke to myself, or my favorite one is when the kids were younger, they would be daddying me in the back with questions all at once. And I would just laugh to myself because I was like, this was not in the brochure. I don't know where this fine print was, but this was the equivalent of the Santa Claus that said, when you put on the suit, you become the big guy. And I didn't read about it. And this is hilarious because this isn't anything that anyone would buy if it was in the brochure. They would be like, I'm out. I don't want that. So then even finding the lightheartedness in parenting allows you to not take it, because there is a lot at stake, but you can take it so serious that you actually overlook the beauty in fatherhood and realizing that you've got human beings that are going to look to you to figure out what a good human being looks like.
What are some of the things your daughters absolutely do not like to do?
Clean their room.
I'd agree with that. Yes, absolutely. It's hard to get them to do that. Yeah.
I feel this dichotomy because the world puts a lot of pressure on young girls and women to behave a certain way and present themselves a certain way. So they spend so much time in the real world putting themselves together that when they come into the solitude of the room, it's just like freedom of, I don't have to care.
That's right. And that's what we have to learn to adapt to, that kind of changing emotion in them when they get to their safe space in their room or at home and they're not on the stage anywhere. They can melt down a little bit or lower their guard, and it can be perceived as being discourteous to parents when in fact the kids just need some space.
And sometimes you have to recognize if your kids are willing to be messy, vulnerable, show emotions, that's a indicator that they feel safe enough to do that.
Right.
And if they were to hold in their emotions, this is how you create the depression, the anxiety type issues. And so the fact that they're allowed to just be themselves, be a little bit messy, that's an indication of the culture that you create in your home. And I had this epiphany a couple years ago that why am I so stressed about how they behave in this home when the litmus test is the real world? And by all accounts, every teacher has walked up to me and said, your kids are model students. I love having them in their class. They're so funny. They contribute and you're doing a great job. So I'm like, why wouldn't I go off the litmus test of what school says? And if school says they're going to be a good human being, which is where they're going to go after they're done with me, why am I stressing out about here? So there is things to stress about at home, but you don't have to overcorrect, because if you're getting good feedback that they're good human beings in the world that in the places that matter, there's something you're doing right that's working, even if it feels by all accounts the house is falling apart.
How do you encourage your daughters to try new things?
Very covertly. So I would say my favorite one is they love Starbucks. And from probably age 8, I would order on the app and make them go inside and pick it up on the counter.
That's a good idea. Kind of teaching them responsibility.
Correct. So my wife's not a big fan of it because she's more always worried about the world doing something bad. But to me, these are the moments where they have to be able to trust to go in and get something that they want. There's another level of letting them learn how to order their own Starbucks, whether you're at Culver's or any type of fast food or any restaurant. Teaching them to order their own food is teaching them to advocate. That's another little moment where if they need something different or if they need something specific, you need to help them understand how to get what they want from other people to accommodate whatever is going on in the moment, whether that be a certain way they have to have their strawberry frappuccino or the way that the extra mocha has to be done. So getting them the confidence in these little small moments where the stakes are zero. No one's going to be hurt. The world's not going to end, but inside they're going to get through a little bitty rep. Oh, I did that. I went inside and picked it up and nothing happened. Interesting. Or if it's advocating, it's, wow, that worked. They actually did what I asked. And so it's finding the moments where the stakes are extremely low and finding little moments that you can introduce to them with a controlled experiment that allows them, where you're still protecting them with the boundary, but in the same time, within this boundary, they can exercise a little bit of independence and learn that I, as a female, can go get what I want. I don't need to wait. I don't need to have permission. That if I want something, I put words together, something that's not always easy, and I can go tell someone.
That's a good point. And you're preparing them for the real world where they will have to interact with other people, especially adults. And if they can be assertive enough to insist on having it the way they want it, that will open up a lot of doors and opportunities for them later on in life.
I mean, even teaching them to use cash. Modern parenting has evolved to all the fancy apps and the debit cards and the teen whatever. But at the end of the day, the discipline, the feeling, the mindset around money, then the dangerous ways that we deal with it in the American economy, all of that starts with how you feel and treat cash. And so my kids do not have a debit card. My kids do not have a teen Venmo. They have cash. They have a wallet filled with cash, and they have to keep track of that cash. They're always leaving it around. And that's part of the problem. You have this important piece of cash. You need to put it somewhere that is equally as important. And they're carrying it around. They're earning how to make that money. All of these are low stakes things, but they are building those reps because there's this kind of overarching idea when it comes to kids that we often think we're raising kids. And so if you're raising kids, you treat them like kids. If you treat someone like kids, they're often just going to act more like a kid, even if they're 14. So flipping it, you're not raising kids, you're raising adults. And so 90% of most of my words, my thinking is orientated through how can I create a little bitty experiment to teach them a little bit about adulthood so that when they're ready, and it's this giant operating system that wasn't just powered on and overloaded and ends up in my basement for living for 10 years, that it's got all the code, it's got all the driver updates, and it works.
That's an excellent point. Preparing them to live independently away from home, not in your basement, and giving them those skills little by little so that when they do turn 18, graduate from high school, and are ready to be on their own, it's not a shock. They're pretty much prepared to do it.
Everything is a preparation. You're preparing their heart to be protected by another man someday. You're preparing their heart to understand what it's like to be a wife. You're preparing their heart to understand what it's like to be heartbroken. You're preparing everything with that intention that even if you die early as a dad and something catastrophically happens, you've spent all the time that you had preparing them. And if you do have to leave early, unfortunately, that your preparation and your leadership worked out in a way that you still were preparing them even past your ability to be here. You had plans, you had wills, you had life insurance, you had all of these things to make sure that when you take your last breath, the preparation doesn't end, because my dad was laying the groundwork for my life long before I ever knew he was.
That's an excellent point. And it's so important for us to do that and also model what a man is supposed to be like and how he should treat her at all times. That's an important thing for guys, especially dodo dads, to do to their daughters.
And even the idea of teaching them that while they may not need a man to be a woman, there is an element that works better with a man, and understanding why is it important that a man follow Jesus? Because a man that follows Jesus is under Jesus' authority. And a man who's not under any authority is a very dangerous one, because he's manipulative and he's going to pretend to be someone, and you're not going to find out till too late. And you're already 2 kids in and you're like, where was this man? It's his heart was orientated in the wrong direction. And if you can't see through it to know what to trust, it's not going to work. And so all of these are preparation conversations. All of these are little micro moments. And something that I've often think about with daughters is early in the beginning, under say like 10, they're bringing you little things like, I had a bad day at the playground, I had a bad day on the bus, or it doesn't start as a bad day, it just starts with, Dad, will you play with me? Because that's code word for, Dad, I had a rough day. All of those little things, however you show up, however you answer, however you respond, that's showing them, was Dad there for the little things? Right. When the stakes were low, did it matter? Because when the stakes are high and she's at a party and she's not feeling safe, she's going to remember when she was 8. If you weren't there when she was 8, she's unlikely to trust you when she's 17. Or if she's in her first accident, does she trust your response to be the first question, are you okay? Or does she trust your response to yell and be angry?
Good point. So you're
all of that's conditioned under 10 in the moments that you might be overlooking right now.
That's right. Has your daughter expressed any career aspirations?
No. If
None.
anything, I would say she's overwhelmed. She's in a trying phase of try everything
That's good.
and trying to sort out what doesn't fit in. So we probably the only thing we've crossed off is biology because she doesn't dissect anything blood related. She even in the schoolroom classes, she's dissecting via video, watching a video of someone else do it because she doesn't have the stomach to be able to watch it. And so that's probably the only thing is we've eliminated anything medical related
Okay. Are
where
you
blood's required.
are you discouraging her or encouraging her to pursue certain things?
Not necessarily a certain thing, but I'm definitely opening their mind to ask different questions. So oftentimes it's not about, especially as a father, we always like to jump towards the answer. But as a good coach, you need to understand the question often does most of the work, not the answer. And so if you get better at asking good questions, the questions will do all the work without you even having to say a word. And so I often either pull apart or my daughter will have an idea and so this is something that she finds annoying. She's told me that, Dad, it's so annoying that you're so good at debating and that you know so much because I can't get anything by you. And that in itself has allowed me to see through these situations so that I can lead her in some other perspective that she didn't know. But also in the same context, one of the other most powerful examples for them to know where to go is by looking at us. So my daughter has complimented me and said, Dad, you have the most dreams of anyone I know. And then she's, Dad, why do you have so many dreams? And I was like, I interviewed 300 people on a podcast and I essentially heard a lot of people's dreams. And I get to dream hack from all those people and all the books. And I've got a lot of life left to live because my dreams are starting to back up like a caboose that won't move. But the idea that she sees a man willing to dream is probably something she'll look in for another man. That a man without dreams will be someone who's not my father. And her heart's always going to be wanting to find, whether she wants to acknowledge it or not, someone like her dad. So those elements of how you show up, how you love, how you lived your life. Even I've heard this situation that one day you'll tell your kids you can have everything you want in life. In the same breath, there might also be a conversation that they ask back, Dad, if I can have everything I want in my life, why didn't you? Most devastating question that I've never been asked because I've essentially created a life engineered away from that answer. But at the same time, if you haven't lived your life of following your dreams and you're telling them then, they're going to look to you and wonder, Dad, if I could do anything I ever wanted, why are you still doing something that you've routinely admitted that you don't like?
Good point. It's hard for girls to see that kind of thing, but I like that you're encouraging them to dream because when they're dreaming, they don't feel trapped in specific situations. They have the control to make the changes necessary to do the things that they want to do.
Most people's trapped realities are just because they can't see beyond it. They can't imagine. And the downside of our school systems is they often engineer out imagination because if you want to imagine, we don't have time for that. We got to move on to the next subject. And so routinely, more and more, they're pulled in back from imagining. And so oftentimes to get someone to take a different step than they've been doing for the last 20 years, I just need to help them imagine a different world. And that sometimes is really easy because they've never done it. And it's like a magic trick to them. It's how'd you do that? I don't know. I just put some words together. But in that same context, getting them to imagine that there's always more and that even growth mindset parenting for daughters, like helping them realize nothing is fixed. Everything is a yet. You just haven't discovered it yet. You haven't tried that yet. You haven't got good at that yet. It's my favorite add-in. They say something fixed and I'll be like, yet. Like I just drop it at the end. Yet. You haven't got good at that yet. You haven't got good at your double round off, back over handspring, whatever gymnastics words they put together. Yet. And so all of those are different elements that are making their mind in ways we never understand in the moment. But those are the character traits that good people have that allow themselves to reach places that the ordinary people can't.
I agree with that. Absolutely. How do you talk to your daughters about faith? Or do you talk to your daughters about faith?
I would say it's a newer conversation for me because I was initially afraid of it for most of their life and I wasn't deeply as convicted as I am now. But I would say I had a really good conversation with my youngest daughter about why we go to church. And I told her, what do you think's going to happen when I'm not here? And she's, I don't know, it's going to be pretty sad and lonely. And I'm like, okay, where are you going to go to feel better? And she's, I don't know. And then I was like, church is one of those places that you go look towards when you need to feel that strength and love. And I'm preparing you to understand how to find your way through in a world without me. And church is that preparation. It was actually probably a good 20-minute conversation while we were cleaning up the garage. And it felt really good just laying out why going to church was so important, because it's preparation for a time when I'm not here. And if I don't lay the groundwork for how to get through it, they're going to get stuck.
And that is an important thing that fathers need to do, because there will be times when dad is not around. They'll be at college, they'll be on their own as moms themselves, and they'll have those questions, and you might not be available. So to have a relationship with God to guide them, and the Holy Spirit to give them the suggestions or the guidance that they need, I think is super beneficial.
I'll share one more story that I started praying at dinner probably back in December, but we've never prayed. So I wasn't just going to whiplash him. Now we're going to hold hands and pray. I just would sit by myself. I would say it. I would pray quietly in my mind, not say a single word. You obviously knew I was praying because I would go to the position with my hands. And I did that probably for 4 months. And then my oldest daughter would be like, Dad, what'd you pray for? And I'm like, I'm not going to invite you in if you're not going to want to pray with me. It's my prayers and it's between me and God. So I kind of kept secluded. But then that tension kept pulling. And so then eventually she's like, okay, we'll pray together. And so now we've probably been praying 3 months. And now recently she's adding things for me to pray for. And just recently, like yesterday, as the time of this recording, I had finished praying and she's like, Dad, you didn't listen. I was wanting you to add in because I wanted you to pray that I hit the high note in my jazz concert on Thursday. And just this little young seed of thought that she can bring a request to her Father that then brings it to the Heavenly Father, and that there's something in her that she's not willing to admit right now because she's 14. But there's something working in a way that simply started with me praying in silence for months without any feedback that it was working, but doing it for myself. I didn't start praying for my family to all of a sudden join me. I prayed for my own self. And then that created the model. So when it comes to faith, whether it be prayer or anything, your habit within faith is the first thing that needs to be right. And that essentially started 2 years ago in November 2024. I essentially was at a point where I was like, okay, I'm going to skip all the nonsense of whatever I was trying to grow in, and I'm just going to flip towards getting right with God. So my church attendance went to almost 98% for the next year, and I just slowly started getting stronger. All of that led to what I just described last night, but that was 2-year effort.
That's right.
Consistent, positive, focused action towards the right direction, and letting the Holy Spirit take the places where you might not know the answer.
It's neat that the Holy Spirit guided her to ask you to pray for her. I think that's great. And if you ever encourage them to pray for themselves?
Not yet.
Okay.
I would say right now they're still unconfident to put those words together for themselves, but continue to model it. And we just got our first communion for the older 3 because of COVID. Got made it complicated, and then it just became complicated, and now we fixed it. But then interesting enough, another little win story was I was getting a cross for my youngest daughter because she wanted one, our cross necklace. And then out of nowhere, my son was like, I want one too.
Oh,
and I'm like, where did that come from? I had zero indication, zero breadcrumbs. And I was just like, and even when I asked why, he doesn't even know why. But I'm like, that's not nothing. A boy just doesn't randomly want a necklace with a cross on it. There's something working that isn't fully revealed yet, but all of it comes from me knowing what's right and leading towards it. And probably the most important when it comes to faith is you have to fear God more than your kids.
Right.
You have to consistently take action to what you know to be true with God's kingdom and know that will work, even if you're facing brimstone and fire from your kids for whatever you're trying to implement.
How do you encourage your daughters to open up to you about their worries and concerns?
I practiced when they were young doing what I call bedtime talk. So we would rehash the day every night We would talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it was just fun and silly sometimes. Sometimes it was just reading book, but it was creating that place where they could bring anything to me and they knew that I would make it better. And so this is like 3 to 6 within this phase where they're not thinking, they're just feeling, and they bring it to you and you make it better over and over. Even to my son, I've said the same thing. We can get through anything together. No matter what it is, together, we can get through anything. And holding it in will just bottle it up. And so reinforcing that over and over, that's like a 500 rep conversation where you're just reconsistently programming them with the pattern. I can bring something to dad and he makes it better.
That's
in the same way we're bringing prayers to the Heavenly Father. I'm trying to instill that with the small things because then they'll bring me the big things. Sometimes the big things are like a hot coal and you're like, wow, this is a hot one. But that's kind of what I asked for because that's what I trained them. So you just got to be ready that when you create this space, they're going to bring you things that's, that's a dumpster fire. But that's why they bring it to you. They bring it to you to know where the fire extinguisher is.
That's right. That's great that you have that kind of relationship with them, and they feel confident enough that they can bring these up and you're not going to rip into them and say, what a stupid thing you did, or that's inconsequential. You shouldn't be feeling that way, because they feel that way and you're tender with their heart. Like you said earlier, you've got their heart in their hand and you're protecting it.
Having daughters is like having your heart beat outside of its body and running into walls. Like there's an element that you've got to be okay with that, but then also there's an element where you got to make sure that heart doesn't get damaged.
How do you try to listen to your daughters without fixing them?
This one was hard because I don't necessarily default to that. I'm always the default man kicks in. One thing that I would say it's taken almost 14 years to get here is instead of trying to get to a speech or some advice mode, I've created this pause in my mind where, what do they wish I knew that they're not telling me? Or I also have asked the question where I've asked my daughter, what about this situation do you think I don't understand? What about this situation do you want me to understand more? Or what part about this conversation do you think I have no idea what I'm talking about? Because there's almost always a part of their feeling and narrative and story that I'm missing. So skipping the advice and going to your actual advice is garbage, because the first thing you need to rule out when it comes to girls and women and your wives is generally what they bring you on the surface is not the problem. And so you have to create enough pause, be curious enough to go beyond whatever's on the surface, because just like a tip of the iceberg, the top is only the beginning and the bottom is where the truth is. So if you jump in with advice for whatever the tip is, you're going to realize that the bottom is the big part and it's going to come back and float to the surface. So being curious, trying to realize whatever they brought to me, there's a deeper story. It's usually on the other side of the room, completely unrelated, except this is just a surface level feeling that's coming out. Sometimes it could be something you did a month ago and it's just been brewing, and you just have to consistently create that pause with your reaction and look for what is it that I don't understand that I need to pause down and understand more of.
That's excellent advice. How do you balance a desire to protect your daughter with a desire to make them independent?
I would say I use God's wisdom now more than I did in the beginning. So in the beginning, I was more orientated towards culture's wisdom, which is very weak and low and mediocre at best.
Always changing.
Always changing. And now it's more orientated towards the fruit of the Spirit, orientated towards preparation to be an Ephesians 5's wife, a Proverbs 31 woman, and understanding to work in God's kingdom according to God's purpose for why he designed women the way they do, and orientating what are the skills, what are the things that we could do as a family that would build the kind of foundation that those other things can be built on. But earlier, YouTube for kids is a great example, and even iPads is a great example. I thought, based on culture, that they told me that iPads are part of everyone's life. And in the future, it's a future I can't even imagine because it's not anything I grew up in the 90s with. And I need to prepare them for it. So I need to help them understand this tool now so they understand it's a tool, not just something to binge. But at the same time, that allowed influence within the iPad. It changed their behavior. YouTube for Kids was something in the same. Oh, this is something to be okay with. And even the weirdos of the YouTuber world, where it's just these families of videography themselves in their life. And it's initially everybody's watching it, and theoretically with some limits. And it's, oh, no, like all of that is cultural influence. And if you're not aware all the influences of culture on your daughters, even at your best, you'll still miss, because it's like a silent whisper of how they're in the book of Malachi is the last words that God said to us. And essentially the last words he said was, I'll turn the hearts of fathers to the children. And when you understand that the hearts to the children, and then you look through the lens of where are culture and where is culture turning my heart of my children away from me. Anytime the heart is being turned away from you, the enemy is at work, and there is an influence that's planting a seed that will become a weed. And hopefully by the time it turns into a weed, it's not a thistle that hurts when you pull it out. But understanding that slow whisper where if your kids' hearts are being turned away from you as a source of wisdom, something most likely is not good for them. Even sports. Someone recently told me sports are really good for my daughters. And I'm like, how do you know it's good? And he went down this big rant, and I'm like, maybe in the beginning it was good, but very little of what modern sports has become with travel sports is good. But yet culture defined it as good. And so people just keep feeding it. No, this is a dumpster fire. But if you don't look for that whisper, if you just go along with the flow, you won't even know you're being gaslit to accept normal.
So what are some of the most important values that you feel are necessary for dads to instill in their daughters?
I would say they're equal value and worth in the eyes of God. By third grade, my daughters, I noticed the phenomenon that before that they were innocent in the princess phase and the frozen phase, and Elsa was all beautiful and teacups. But past third grade, they noticed there's themselves and the world. And then they notice the world has an opinion about it. And since then, it's an everyday effort to make sure that they don't define themselves in the way the world defines them, and that they get to choose how they define them. They get to choose the opinion of themselves, not the world. And with social media and phones and text groups, all of it is defining their value and worth. And so your value and worth is where you take your actions from. It's where you take your belief from. It's where you go look for the world of what your value is. And if you see yourself as low value, you will accept someone treating you with low value. But if you have high value and high worth, you are always going to let people go that don't respect what you know to be valuable.
That is excellent advice. And to encourage them to make those changes, to let go of people that are in fact harming them because of their affiliations, that would be an important lesson to learn, because it seems to me that girls especially have this desire to be popular. And when they are trying to be the popular girls at school, they have to give up so much of themselves in order to be accepted through the culture.
Yes. And that just the external view of manipulation, that a lot of what my kids run into with bullying is they have character traits that other kids don't have, and other kids don't understand why they don't have that character trait. And so because of that, it makes them insecure. And so they bully my kids because my kids have something they don't, whether present with their kids, whatever it may be. A lot of the bullying that my kids experience is in fact just because they are high character people and other people are missing it.
Good point. And they know that they're high character people, and that gives them the self-confidence that they need to respond. If not respond, but to just deflect the words from the bullies.
Correct. And let go and be like,
right.
and then let go. And even one little bullying hack that I've learned, it doesn't really help when they're being bullied, but you can do it for others and create like a posse, is when you see someone being bullied, you step in for that person and defend them. So if you can do that and stand up for someone, because it's always easier as a friend standing up against a bully than the person being bullied. So if you do that for others, people will then turn it to you. And that in itself is a character trait, that you won't exist in a room where other people are being belittled. And there's nothing more dangerous than letting other people do something bad and having good people just watch.
If you had to instill special rules or for cell phone or internet use? Do your girls have cell phones?
My oldest daughter has cell phone, which was a mistake at the 8. We did it at 11. The other kids do not have one, so I'm not sure when they're going to get one at this point. But I would say one thing that I'm currently doing for a rule is my oldest wants Snapchat. And so she's 14, and there's a couple things that I'm thinking through this. One, at 16, there's already this freedom click that's going to kick, and I'm going to have less authority. So at some point, she's going to go into the world, and she's going to be able to get whatever she wants, whether I get prepared or not for it. And at the same time, she's only 6 years away from 18, where the world is her oyster, and she can do whatever she wants without my authority. So there's a world where you have to protect them, but you have to prepare them. So what I'm doing with my daughter at now is I essentially I used AI to help me, so it's a little bit longer than normal, but it's like a 10-page contract with 5 specific gates that she has to pass in order to get Snapchat. And so their behavior, their identity, their responsibility, their feedback. Can she listen to what I tell her and get a no and just walk away? Or is she arguing? All these little things that represent her internal view of herself. If that's not at a certain point, it's not going to happen. And so she knows. And interesting enough, she's had this document probably since February. And in the beginning, did nothing. But now as summer's coming, she's diving in. She's getting things done. And even habits are changing that I haven't set up. So the rule isn't necessarily the current system. The rules are how we get access to the higher stuff. Because at some point, you either got to give it to them before they're ready. I'm going to try to balance, again, 14. I'm making it up as we go. And so at 14, it's balancing with preparing at the same time, moving it forward.
What about sleepovers? Can your daughters participate in those?
Yes, I'm aware that sleepovers are different in nowadays standards and that they aren't the sleepovers when we were younger. And sometimes I rely on my wife's connections to know different parenting styles. But the most dangerous part to realize with other kids' parents is they will normalize things that you don't consider normal and you won't fully know. And whether that be late night YouTube, late night Xbox, and teaching your kids that they can go there, but the rules still apply is not a perfect thing because there's always their own free will. But teaching my son does more sleepovers than my daughter, but teaching them that our rules still apply and we don't play Call of Duty. We do not do first person shooter games. We do not do Fortnite. All of those games are out. So if my son is around other kids playing them, he knows not to. And just because you're at someone else's house doesn't change those rules. So it's not that you take away the environment. It's can you prepare them in a way to operate with a level of integrity when you're not there to call them out, and trust, because trust is issued, but trust can be lost, and trust that they're following through. And you essentially give them enough trust to hurt themselves with it. And then once they hurt themselves, you take it away and then you work having them help rebuild it.
Yep.
Which is its own preparation in itself, all in its little mini exercise.
Person I follow on Facebook is called Officer Gomez. He is a school resources officer in Idaho, and he is educating parents about the dangers that are involved in various apps that the kids are using. Snapchat is one of them, for which he has absolutely no positive words to say. But then he talks about these other video games, etc., how predators are engaging with kids through these games. So when you're preparing for them to use these games, even with their friends, how are you preparing them to encounter people who might be after them for less than honorable reasons?
I would say it's preparing them with no different than the sex talk. It's even with my daughter, with the Snapchat idea and getting these 5 gates passed, have a social media quiz. And one of those questions is someone just asked for a picture and didn't specify what. And so you're not sure what to do next. And you this boy, so you're not sure what he's looking for. And what do you do? How do you respond? And so it's really just creating a conversation, because once you dive into language models, you understand most people's problems is they just don't have a model. And once they get a model for a language situation, they're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I've just never understood that's the paragraph that you put together in order to reach that objective. So by having these just conversations and creating a neural pattern in their mind for, oh, it's a situation, we talk through it, their brain now has a record to pull from. But if you do not have that, if you have not created that conversation, if you have not prepared them with what could happen in that scenario, they're just going to fly by the seat of the pants. And that's generally, at a young age, survival caveman type instincts, which is to be liked, interested, appreciated by the world.
That's right.
It's not their own interest. It's just to try to maintain their own status in the world, which is not the best choice.
Very sound advice, Ben, really. Do you have any special rules for dating? I know it's young for you, but your oldest is going into high school next year, right?
Yes, and right now I would say it's probably a good thing because she says that all the boys are too immature.
Awesome.
So that's a positive, and which means she already understands what a mature man looks like from some element of me. And so she's already filtering out the immature men. And so we haven't even got to the point where we have rules because it hasn't even really been a topic. And I would say I am unsure of the right answer here yet, but I would say my instincts goes to continuing to talk about it, continue to guide her with different scenarios so that she understands what's going on.
Okay, that's fair enough.
And sometimes we use other people's relationships. So she'll talk about someone having a boyfriend or something, and I will point out, oh, yeah, that's not a good thing, or that guy's going to be problems.
Perfect. Especially
tell her why.
Yeah, and especially if she can start sensing that.
Correct.
Things that her friends are doing that are wrong.
People give you plenty of dumpster fires to ignore. You just got to train them to look for those, and they'll stay away from that type of relationship.
Good point. If you could roll the clock back, is there anything you do differently in raising your daughter?
I think I would have been more patient.
That is a problem for guys.
And so because the opposite of patience is really anger and grit and forcing. And so it's almost this place where that I've noticed with Evan, because he's with me every day, because I raise him, that he's calibrated in his frequency that he can just rest and trust me unequivocally, that he knows my reaction perfectly. That type of consistency is something I would have done before, because when they were, essentially the problem really comes down to it when you have young kids, for the first ones, their emotions stir something in your emotions, and your emotions aren't present emotions. They're your childhood emotions. So I would have given myself the advice, clean your heart up, because these girls are going to send you and trigger into places that you are not prepared for, and you aren't going to know where it's coming from, and you're going to react from a place that has nothing to do with them. And I probably would, if I could put one sticky note of advice for myself on day one, recognize if you have to yell to solve a problem with your daughters, you're the problem.
Good point.
Anytime you have to raise your voice, if no life is being threatened, you're the problem, because you should be able to accomplish anything you need in a cool, calm, collective voice.
Excellent.
I have not
advice.
done that well enough.
How can people connect with you if they'd like to get to know you, follow you, maybe ask you for some advice?
I would say LinkedIn and Facebook are the best places to reach out to me. So both of them, I'm on my own name, Ben Killoy, Killoy. Facebook and LinkedIn, both active equally as much. Go ahead, follow me there, friend me, let me know where you heard me from, and love to get to know more about, or even something you took away from this. I always like to hear, because there's always a lot of wisdom or a lot of things that I say, but not knowing what sticks. So if there was something that sticks, let me know.
Do you offer any coaching for dads?
I do. I essentially help men step deeper into their own identity, because most fathering, most parenting issues, most marriage issues come down to a leadership crisis, where it's where we're missing the same coordinated leadership we can have at work that makes chaos, but we're missing it at home, and that comes from us. And if we didn't have it modeled for us in the same way I was talking about language models, we won't be able to do it ourselves. So helping men lead and steward the relationship with their wife, their relationship with their kids, and helping them understand how to have a vision and lead them towards it is what I do.
Thank you. I appreciate you telling your story today. You had lots of great advice for dads, and I know it will help strengthen the father-daughter relationship for guys who listen. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Greg, for the opportunity to share my story as well.
That was a thoughtful and encouraging conversation with Ben Killoy. One of the themes that stood out to me was Ben's belief that fatherhood is preparation. Every conversation, lesson, and moment of connection is helping prepare daughters for the day when they must navigate life on their own. Ben encouraged fathers to be intentional about creating trust early. At age 8, when daughters bring even their smallest problems to their fathers, they are learning whether they can trust their dads with bigger problems at age 18. He also reminded us that confidence is built through small experiences. Allowing daughters to advocate for themselves, make decisions, and learn responsibility in low-stakes situations prepares them for greater challenges later in life. Another important takeaway was helping daughters to understand their value and worth. Ben believes fathers play a critical role in teaching daughters that their identity should not be defined by social media, peer pressure, or cultural expectations, rather by who they are as individuals and as children of God. Perhaps the most memorable advice was this: if you have to yell to solve a problem with your daughter, you're probably the problem. Patience, consistency, and calm leadership create the environment where trust can grow. To connect with Ben Killoy, you can find him on Facebook and LinkedIn. Ben also coaches men who want to become stronger leaders in their homes, marriages, and families. If you found value in this episode of the Dodo Dads podcast, please share it with another father who could use the encouragement. Because the world needs more girl dads, you are welcome to join the Dodo Dads Facebook group too. Thank you for listening.